When my husband Leonardo collapsed on the kitchen floor that Sunday morning, everyone expected me to scream, to run, maybe to faint. But I just stood there, looking at that body stretched out on the cold floor, and I felt nothing but a strange emptiness. The neighbors came running when they heard the sound of his fall. The ambulance arrived in 15 minutes. The paramedics tried to revive him right there, in front of everyone, but it was too late. 58 years old, massive heart attack, they said. My daughter Hannah arrived half an hour later, her eyes already red before she even walked through the door. She threw herself onto her father's body and cried so hard I thought she might throw up from sobbing so much. My son-in-law held her by the shoulders, crying too. The neighbors hugged me, offered me water, tea, anything. Mrs. Grace, who had lived next door for 30 years, held my hands and said I was in shock, that it was normal not to be able to react right away. I just nodded and accepted the glass of water she offered me. The wake was the next day. The room was full of people I barely knew, Leonardo's co-workers, distant cousins, friends from decades ago. Everyone was crying. Everyone was telling beautiful stories about him. What a good friend he was, how hard-working he was, what a family man he was. My daughter didn't leave the casket for hours. She stroked his hand, adjusted his tie, spoke softly things I couldn't hear. I sat in a chair in the corner of the room, receiving condolences from people who said they understood my pain. But nobody understood. Nobody could understand. Because while everyone was mourning the loss of a good man, I was there with a secret that weighed so much I could feel my shoulders curving forward. A secret I had carried for 17 years, since that night when I came home early from a trip and found something that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. 17 years ago, I was a different woman, more naive perhaps, more trusting. I worked as a nurse and had just finished a specialization course in another city. I was supposed to return on Sunday, but classes ended early on Friday night, and I decided to take the bus and surprise Leonardo. I got home around 11 at night. The house was dark, but his car was in the garage. I thought it was a bit strange because he usually left at least the porch light on when he was home alone. I opened the door slowly, without making noise, thinking maybe he was already asleep. But then I heard voices coming from the bedroom. Low voices. My first reaction was confusion. Was he watching television? But it wasn't the sound of a television. They were real voices, a conversation, muffled laughter. I went up the stairs, stepping lightly, with that strange feeling in my stomach of someone who knows they're going to discover something bad, but still hopes they're wrong. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open just a little and saw my husband lying in our bed. And next to him was Archer, his best friend since adolescence. Archer, who had dinner at our house every weekend. Archer, who was our daughter's godfather. They weren't just talking. They were embracing, intimate, in a way that left no doubt. I must have made some sound, some heavy breath, because they both looked at the door at the same time. Leonardo's face went into panic. Archer got up from the bed quickly, grabbed his shirt, mumbled something, and left through the door without looking at me. Leonardo sat on the bed, shirtless, with that look of a cornered animal. I didn't make a scene at that moment. I just stood there, feeling everything I knew crumbling. He started talking, trying to explain, but I didn't want to listen. I went downstairs, grabbed my suitcase that was still in the living room, and went to sleep in the guest room. In the days that followed, Leonardo begged. He cried, got on his knees, swore it had been a mistake, a moment of weakness. Said he loved our family, that he loved me, that it would never happen again. But I knew it wasn't true. I saw in his eyes that it hadn't been the first time, and it wasn't hard to confirm. I started paying attention to things that had gone unnoticed before. The frequent business trips, the phone calls he took in the backyard, the nights he came home late saying he had been solving problems at the office. Archer disappeared from our lives after that night, but I knew there were others. And then, 3 weeks after that discovery, I found the test results. I was looking for a document in his office when I saw the folder hidden at the back of the drawer. Blood tests, STD tests, and the diagnosis that made my world collapse once and for all. HIV positive. The date of the test was from 2 months earlier. 2 months earlier, I was still sleeping with him. 2 months earlier, I still believed I had a normal marriage. I grabbed the folder and went downstairs. Leonardo was in the living room watching the news. I threw the papers in his lap and asked if he was going to tell me or if he was going to keep pretending. He looked at the test results and started crying. Said he had found out recently that he was terrified, that he didn't know how to tell me. Said he had tested me without my knowledge, that he had asked a doctor friend to include the HIV test in my routine hospital exams, and that I had tested negative. I was clean. He had exposed me to the virus, but by some miracle I hadn't contracted it. At that moment, I should have left. I should have taken my daughter, who was 7 years old at the time, and started my life over away from him. But I didn't leave. You know why? Because of what he told me next. He said that if I told anyone, if I left him, if I destroyed his image, he would take his own life, and he would make it look like it was my fault. I spent 17 years living a lie. Leonardo started treatment, the virus became undetectable, and to the rest of the world we continued being the perfect couple. He never touched me again. We had separate bedrooms, his excuse being that he snored too much and disturbed my sleep. Our intimate life simply ceased to exist, but I preferred it that way. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. Every hug he gave our daughter made me tense, although I knew rationally there was no risk. Every family dinner was silent torture. I smiled in photos, prepared the food, received visitors, but inside, I was dead. My daughter grew up thinking she had parents who loved each other. She never knew anything. Nobody knew. I continued working at the hospital, taking care of my patients, coming home and pretending everything was fine. Leonardo continued his double life, more discreet, more careful, but I knew he hadn't stopped. I saw the small details, the different smell on his clothes, the increasingly elaborate excuses. But I didn't say anything. I had made a silent agreement with myself. I would endure it until my daughter grew up, until she built her own life, and then I would leave. I would start over far away, in another city, and finally I would breathe. Hannah graduated, got a good job, met a decent guy, got married. I was matron of honor at the wedding, cried at the ceremony like every mother cries, but my tears were of relief. Finally, I was free. Finally, I could leave without destroying the image my daughter had of her father. I had even started making plans. I had looked at some apartments to rent in another city. I had talked to a friend about the possibility of working at the hospital there. I was just a few months away from gathering the courage to announce I was leaving. And then he died. He collapsed on the kitchen floor on a Sunday morning and simply died. At the funeral, everyone commented on how strong I was, how well I was handling the loss. They said I was a woman of strength, that my faith was sustaining me. If they only knew. If they knew that every word of comfort, every hug, every beautiful story about Leonardo was like a knife slowly entering me. Not from pain, but from anger. Anger at having wasted 17 years of my life trapped with a man who never truly loved me. Anger at having given up my happiness for fear of destroying an image that wasn't even real. Anger at myself for being a coward. After the burial, when everyone left and the house was empty, I finally cried. But I didn't cry for him. I cried for myself. For the woman I was before that night when I came home from the trip. For the cheerful nurse who believed in love and loyalty. For the mother who wanted to protect her daughter from any pain. I cried for the 17 years I'll never get back. A week after the burial, Hannah showed up at the house wanting to organize her father's things. She said it would be too hard for me to do it alone. We went up to his office together and started sorting through documents, clothes, personal items. And then she found it. It was in a box at the top of the closet. Letters, dozens of letters, love letters, Letters that Archer had written to him over the years. Letters he had kept like treasures. I saw my daughter's face change as she read. I saw the confusion, the denial, the shock, and finally the understanding. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and asked if I knew. I took a deep breath and said yes, that I had known for a long time. She asked why I never told, why I endured all of that. I held her hand and told her the truth, because I wanted to protect the image she had of her father, because I thought it was my duty to endure, because I was a coward. Today, 2 years later, I live alone in a small apartment in another city. My daughter visits me every month, and our relationship is stronger than ever. She understood. She understood that sometimes a mother's love makes us make wrong decisions thinking we're protecting. I don't cry anymore. I don't feel anger anymore. I just feel a deep tiredness and one certainty. I wasted too many years living for others. Now I live for myself. And if there's anything I learned from all of this, it's that secrets don't protect anyone. They only imprison.